How you doing? I'm Screen Door. Thanks for watching my channel. If you've seen me before, you know that I'm an older backpacker. I've been doing this my whole life, and so my tips are aimed a little bit more at the older group of outdoors men and women, but others obviously can watch. I welcome that. So today I want to talk about bears. Now, first of all, have I personally been around bears? The answer is actually quite a bit. I don't see myself as an expert on bears. I'm not a bear researcher. I've never been a national park ranger or anything like that. But as a young kid, my family and would go to the Great Smoky Mountains back all the way in the 1950s, a long time ago. So I began to see black bears there, and I started backpacking right after college. I've been doing it my whole life, and I've been to the Smokies and seen plenty of black bears, Big South Fork, Tennessee area. I live in Kentucky. I've been to Red River Gorge. I've never seen bears there, but there are a few in the Red River Gorge, a few more in Big South Fork, and plenty of them in the Great Smoky Mountains. I've seen them, sections of the Appalachian Trail. I'm a section hiker. Then I started going west to Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and I've seen bears there. I started to see grizzly bears. The difference is, by the way, if you ever see a bear, a black bear's face, it's called a dish face, so the nose kind of goes like that, whereas a grizzly bear, the most distinctive marking is a huge hump on its back. So if you look at a side profile, you'll see this hump right behind the head, which is muscle. And the face is not dished, it's a shorter face. The nose part goes pretty much straight down. And color doesn't help, because some grizzly bears are so dark you would think they were black in color, and some black bears can be brown, and a few of them even a blonde color. Grizzly bears, and in Alaska they're called brown bears, by the way, so if you hear me say brown bears, I'm really referring to grizzly bears. They're much larger. They're at the top of the food chain. So there's a difference between black bears and brown bears. Some people, most people, researchers say that black bears are a little less, little easier to intimidate and a little less lethal, though there have been people hurt and killed by black bears. And grizzly bears or brown bears are harder to intimidate, and they're at the top of the food chain, and they kind of know it. So that's the difference between brown bears and black bears. There are some grizzly bears in Wyoming, Montana, so let's say Yellowstone National Park. There are many more if you go up to, let's say, Glacier National Park closer to Canada. And if you go into Alaska, that's where the most brown bears are. Brown bears, grizzly bears, same thing. So I started to go out west, and then I started to go to Alaska. And I've been to Alaska actually many times, 13 summers probably I've gone up there, and backpacked all over the state. Wrangell, St. Elias, Gates of the Arctic up north, number of trips to Denali, the Kenai Peninsula, and then I started going to Lake Clark National Park on some backpack trips. It's a very remote park. Very few people go there, because to get there you have to fly in, usually with a bush pilot, being dropped off for a week or so, and then they come back a week or so later and bring you back, or you could take a boat from Homer, but it's difficult to get to. You can't just drive there and go backpacking. So therefore there are fewer people. But I started because I met somebody who was what was called a backcountry volunteer. So the National Park Service has a program called VIP, Volunteers in Parks. A wonderful program. And if you camp in a campground in a national park and there's a campground host, that's a VIP, a volunteer. Well, I kind of lucked into learning about the situation applied to the backcountry of Alaska. And they do vet and then choose some volunteers to do backcountry volunteering. So I did that at Lake Clark National Park for about 6 summers. And a bunch of that time was at a place called Chinitna Bay, which is on the Cook Inlet. And it's a remote park to begin with, and this is a remote area where there are 2 bear viewing areas. So were you going to see bears at Lake Clark National Park if you went to Chinitna Bay? The answer is 100% yes. Why? Because of the multiple food sources. The national park, when Lake Clark became a national park in 1980, set up this Chinitna Bay area as a bear viewing area because the bears had already been there and the bears were not going to leave. They lived there. And so we're talking every day that I did that volunteer work, I would see 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 bears every day. They're probably the same bears. They just live there, feeding on shed grass, which is marshy grass in a meadow made salty by the ebb and flow of the tide as it would come up and run through a thing called Hood Creek through the middle of this meadow and leach out into the grass. And the bears sort of saw that as a salty salad. They loved it. They would also feast on salmon a little later in the summer when the salmon would make a run up Hood Creek. They would, when the tide was down at low tide, would go out and dig for clams. There were berries in the low reaches of the mountains behind the meadows. So there were multiple food sources. They were well fed. They would occasionally see some people like me. And I'd walk up and down the beach a mile from the patrol cabin where I volunteered and stayed, sometimes alone, sometimes with another person. And when I would walk down to the bear viewing areas, I was in effect the eyes and the ears of the park. I had a satellite phone to check in daily with the National Park Service headquarters in Lake Clark National Park. And I would, just sort of keep an eye on things and give information to the National Park Service. So that was my role. I wasn't a ranger. I wasn't law enforcement. I was just pretty much the eyes and the ears for the park and would do tasks, work on the cabin, stuff like that. So then I was around a lot of bears. I've also seen grizzly bears in the backcountry many times backpacking, whether it's Wyoming, Montana, well, more Montana, and then lots of times in Alaska in multiple parks. So I'm kind of bear comfortable, I would say. And I've learned some things. I mean, if you see a bear, don't run. You can't outrun the bear. And what you could do is trigger the predator-prey response of the bear to run you down simply because you've taken off running. So you definitely don't want to do that. What do you do if a bear would come towards you or look like it's going to take an interest in you, which makes you afraid? Rarely is a bear a predator and the human is the prey. It's very rare. It has happened occasionally, but is a bear going to stalk you and have that lead to something that's horrible? Usually not. Occasionally it does happen. I'm not going to lie to you. I've read about that. Well, again, you don't run. If it's a black bear, you're going to have a little better chance of sort of standing your ground and intimidating it, throw a rock at it, hit it with a stick. And most of the time, by the way, both black bears and brown bears are going to take off if they see you. They're usually disinterested in human beings. They hear a human voice. If you make yourself big, stand up, wave your arms, don't go crazy yelling and all that. Sometimes just talk in a calm voice and talk to the bear as if it's a person, and then slowly back away. That's what you should do if you see a bear. Just sort of, get out of there. Just back away. If the bear charges, researchers think sometimes there are these bluff charges and the bear doesn't even know if it's going to veer off right at the end. You should stand your ground. If it makes contact and it's a black bear, kind of fight it off, try to get it to leave. If it's a brown bear or a grizzly, the researchers say, the textbooks say, drop to the ground, cover back of your neck with your hands, pull your legs under your stomach and lie there quietly. Even, yes, if it's starting to bite at you or swat you with these razor sharp claws, which they have. Most researchers will say you've got to kind of take your hit and have it think that you are completely incapacitated, and then it leaves. There have been some cases I've read about where the bear will go over or off to the side and lay down, and if you start to move prematurely, it'll come back over and start swatting at you or biting at you again. So you have to I can't imagine doing that, to be honest. I've never had to do that. But to just lie there where you're already hurt, and you've just got to hope that it will leave. Researchers say, this is all stuff I've looked up and read, and I've read books, and you can do the same. So, don't use me as the authority. I'm just telling you stuff that I've read and heard, is that if it looks like it's really going to go totally the wrong way, even with a grizzly bear fight, it's like, what do you got to lose? If you're pretty sure you're in a real fight for your life, sometimes what you got to do is just fight. So anyway, those are decisions you have to make, but that's what the textbook tends to say. Now, what about defenses? Should you carry a defense? I personally don't go into bear country, whether it's black bear or brown bear, without some defense. Just seems reasonable to me. This is one thing. This doesn't weigh much, so it's not, annoying to carry. And this is pepper spray. This brand is called Bear Pepper Mace, but it's basically pepper spray. What's the chemical word? Casmian or something. But it's just a chemical stuff. It's got this orange, safety on it. You pop this off, and now you've got exposed this black button. And if you push down on that, it's going to spray out 20, 30 feet, and they put food coloring in this sort of to act like a tracer, so you can see, and it'll come out in a V. I've shot this off before, and it'll lay out there, and it gets in the bear's face and nose and eyes, and they hate it, and they're preoccupied with this, and that gives you a chance to back away, to get out of there. Does it work? Research says, I've seen it say as high as 80%, sometimes as high as 90%, it will repel a bear, including brown bears. Does it sometimes not work? Well, yeah, I've talked to a couple rangers once at dinner up in Alaska and Lake Clark, and they said they used it that very day to try to get a bear to move off a trail. They were on an assignment going up this trail. Aren't many trails in Alaska. It's usually route hiking or orienteering with a map and compass or a GPS, but they happen to have been on one of the few trails in this story they're telling me. And they couldn't get the bear to leave, and they shot pretty much most of the can of pepper spray, so they turned around and went back to back to the headquarters. They said, we'll just do the task another day. I read a story about a situation, I think it was in Alaska too, two people, and the bear attacked them, and one person was hurt and told the other person to go get help. The other person went to get help, got help, came back, and the first person was dead, and the pepper spray was empty. So there are times when we know for sure it doesn't work. Most of the time it does. Here's the advantage of pepper spray. A, it's not lethal to neither you nor the animal. So you're not going to, the worst thing that happens, it says on the back, wash your eyes for about 20, 25 minutes. Just run water on your eyes. I have gotten some of this in my face from having shot it off. I've never had to repel a bear with it. Don't misunderstand me, but I have shot it off. I have been, because of my day job, in my work situation, gotten mace in my eyes, and it's really, really annoying as hell. So you can't really do much else but worry about the annoyance of the pepper spray or the mace in your face, and that's where the value comes. So that's pepper spray. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt the bear permanently. It's not going to hurt you permanently. It's lightweight, and the percentages of effectiveness are actually pretty high. So I wouldn't go anywhere into bear country, in the backcountry, hiking or backpacking. And definitely if I'm being flown in, and I've done a lot of bush plane fly-ins, they won't put this in the cabin of the plane, a Cessna or a de Havilland Beaver or whatever you're flying in. They'll take this and strap it on the strut of the plane, or I should say they'll duct tape it on and then cut it off when they land and hand you your pepper spray. Because if it goes off in the plane, the bush pilot's in serious trouble. So what about guns? Well, I don't know. when I was a volunteer in Lake Clark one summer, they certified me, this is my own, but on a 12 gauge shotgun. So this is a Remington 870 Express, and it's the shotgun of choice, at least when I was talking to these rangers up in Alaska. It's relatively inexpensive. It weighs 7 or so pounds. I consider that heavy as hell. I'm a kind of an ultralight backpacker. But it's pretty accurate. I got certified on this where I had to go up in Alaska to a range in the backcountry and shoot at a target the size of a charging brown bear, and you got to hit the kill zone, which is vital organs, like in the chest area, and you got to hit it a number of times in a period of about 20 seconds, and you got to reload a round as well. And so they time it, and they're also checking your accuracy. I got certified on it, and I carried it. Actually, what you should do, according to most people who give advice on this, who know what they're talking about, is have a couple of defenses. You can have some pepper spray and have the shotgun. By the way, I'm not going to tell you stories. There are times I know about these. I've talked to enough people and read enough stuff. My eyes go to all stories about bear attacks where sometimes, first of all, bear attacks are very rare. So I want you to know that. Very rare. But when they've happened, they're horrible. And sometimes they happen so fast you don't have time to grab anything, whether it's this, to get the safety off. I know of a case, I'm recording this in late April 2021. I just read a story yesterday, 2 stories. Young man from Mansfield, Ohio, not far from where I'm recording this, who was killed. He was on a hunting trip. There was another person. Bear attack because the bear had killed, I think, a moose and was feeding on the moose. They didn't know that. They were near all this. The bear attacked them so fast they could grab nothing. They had both pepper spray and they had a weapon, I think, according to the article I read. And one man, 22-year-old man, got killed, and his friend, bear didn't touch, and the bear left. And they had 2 defenses, but it happened so fast they had no chance to react. So things. What about the nightmare of backpackers? They're in their tent, and a bear literally comes into the tent, tears into the tent. Well, I happen to do a podcast. It's called the Jerry Springer Podcast. Yeah, it's a TV guy, and we've been friends since 1969. So we did a podcast on our regular podcast called the Jerry Springer Podcast, and you can look the podcast up on any podcast platform you choose. Go into our archives, and there's an interview we did with a woman from Pineville, Kentucky, who was in Gates of the Arctic National Park. I had backpacked there. I flew in with the same bush pilot. His name is Dirk. He's great. D-I-R-K, Dirk. Coyote Air out of Coldfoot, Alaska. Her group, several years after I'd been there, went in. It's 6 in the morning on the morning she's coming out. Dirk is coming to pick up her. She's going to be one of the first people going out in his de Havilland Beaver. And at 6 in the morning, a bear tore into her tent and nearly killed her. And they had to get Dirk on the satellite phone and said, there's been an emergency and this woman has been hurt badly. She's bleeding. We need help now. He came in, they took the seat out, back seat out of the de Havilland Beaver. They made a sort of a stretcher. They put her in. They got her to emergency help, and she's had surgeries for many years trying to correct all this. That bear tore into her tent, no warning. It just happened. No one knows why. So things can happen. I'm telling you that to tell you the truth, but not to say, don't go. I love going to Alaska, and I have gone to sleep seeing bears, football field away, grazing over on another ridge. And if you can't lay down your head and go to sleep knowing that they're around, then pick another recreation. Nobody has to do that. Nobody has to do backpacking. Here's another defense. I started to use this. I bought this after I bought the shotgun. This is a Ruger 454. So this is a handgun, and it's pretty heavy, 2.5 pounds. The shotgun is 7 pounds. So this is much lighter, and you can put it in a holster or wear it around your waist. Some people like to use more of a body holster. So this will fire 45 Colts, which are pretty useless against a charging grizzly bear, so I'm not suggesting that. Pretty good for target shooting though, but it also will hold a 454 Kazul bullet ordnance, which is much heavier, and it will kill a grizzly bear. In fact, this is a Ruger, their Super Red Hawk, and they've even etched on it the Alaskan. So they made this weapon for hunters, fishermen and women, backpackers, because it's light enough and manageable enough. What's the downside? It's extremely dramatic to shoot. I mean, there's such a short barrel, and the explosion is so huge that the recoil is pretty large. And I've fired it many times with the 454 Kazuls in it. And I don't know. I mean, could you hit a charging bear in the moment when both you and the animal are full of adrenaline and there's all this drama going on? I don't know. I suppose if it was as close as me to the camera, I probably could. I certainly would try. I've never had to shoot it. I took it out maybe twice in my experiences in the backcountry because I felt threatened enough to do so, but I've never had to use it. I've never had to shoot any bear. I've been shocked to have bears on several occasions that I have met deep in the backcountry, having been flown in. No people anywhere around. And big grizzly bears, big Alaskan brown bears, where when and thinking this one case where there was another guy with me, and we kind of announced ourselves to the bear, let it know we were humans. We stood up. We were sitting by a lake, just hanging out after we filled up some water bottles, enjoying this incredible backcountry view, this scene. Turned around. There's a rule in Alaska I always use called the 20-second rule. Always look behind you. Just you get in the habit of sort of checking what's behind you. And I said, oh my God, look at this. And over this ridge and coming right kind of towards us was this beautiful, big Alaskan brown bear. And we stood up. The guy got out pepper spray. I got out this Ruger 454, and we sort of called to the bear and waved our arms, and the bear stopped and stood up on its back feet and looked at us and moved its head around, sniffing. They can smell better than they can see. Dropped back down, turned around, and ran the other way. And I thought, that's pretty amazing. 400-pound bear running from me. I'm not like even a big dude, and it just turned around and ran away. I've had that happen more than once, where they typically they leave. And that's how it best ends. So the end of the story is, my best backpack trips have been when I've seen bears. So I want to see bears. I want to be safe, and I want to be comfortable. Hence, I take some defenses. I do not go into the backcountry defenseless. Have I ever used them? No. And I'm now, pretty old compared to backpackers, so it's pretty likely I never will in a whole lifetime of going into the backcountry. So always remember, we're in their neighborhood. It's not the other way around. So they're not there to threaten us. We are there because we frankly want to see how the wilderness is and what's in the wilderness, and that includes majestic, sublime animals like bears the size of small cars. So you have to decide for you if you're comfortable doing that kind of backpacking. If you are, then I say I bet you'll enjoy it as much as I have. This is Screen Door. Peace.